Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. UN nuclear regulator chief Rafael Grossi holds talks in Iran with the country's Atomic Energy Agency chief. It comes just 2 days before Tehran and Washington meet for the second time for high-stakes nuclear negotiations. Chinese President Xi Jinping arrives in Cambodia to wrap up a Southeast Asia tour aimed at strengthening trade ties as U.S. tariffs pile pressure on Beijing. Before this, Xi's stops were in Vietnam and Malaysia. Gold hits a record high of over $3,357 an ounce as investors scramble for safety amid rising U.S.-China trade tensions. The shiny metal is seen as a safe bet during economic uncertainty. The Czech Republic becomes fully independent of Russian oil, ending its reliance for the first time in history. It follows the upgrade of a major oil pipeline, allowing the country to fully switch to Western routes. The British government bans travellers from bringing in cheese, meat and other dairy products from the European Union. The crackdown comes amid a major livestock disease spreading across Europe. Hello and welcome. Our top story today is from Somalia. For decades, the East African nation has been in dispute with Somaliland, its breakaway region with an administration of its own. Now, the self-declared country in the Horn of Africa has officially suspended dialogue and negotiations with Somalia that could potentially broker peace. This move adds a new chapter to the Somaliland row that began in 1991 when Somaliland unilaterally declared independence. The breakaway region has accused Somalia of repeatedly breaching its territorial integrity. But the trigger point for suspending any form of dialogue is a recent visit by Somalia's Prime Minister Hamza Barre to a disputed city named Las Anoj. Now, this city is at the center of a long-running dispute between the two sides. Las Anoj is located in the Sool region, a territory that Somaliland claims as theirs. However, Las Anoj is currently controlled by Khaatumo forces who pledge their loyalty to Somalia. Khaatumo forces are local militias who want their regions to be a part of Somalia, not Somaliland. In early 2023, they fought against Somaliland's separatist forces and took control of Las Anoj, the same city that Somalia's Prime Minister recently visited. After that, they declared their administration, called the SSC-Khaatumo. Earlier this week, Somalia recognized the SSC-Khaatumo as a federal member state, further widening the differences. This announcement followed the 4-day visit by the Somalian Prime Minister. Now, Mogadishu said that this visit was a part of their quote-unquote unity reinforcement mission. However, Somaliland sees the visit as a provocation. The authorities have questioned the purpose of the Prime Minister's visit. It was deemed as a deliberate attempt to incite division and conflict. The new tensions come as a setback for years of peace efforts between the two sides. The conflict in the Horn of Africa carries repercussions far beyond. Though not recognized internationally, Somaliland, which sits in a strategic position, has extensively built foreign ties. Now, according to reports, it is now offering access to its Red Sea coastal base to the United States in exchange for formal recognition. The territory has already forged strong ties with the UAE and Saudi Arabia, with significant infrastructure and security collaboration in place. As relations with Mogadishu unravel, the stakes are growing for the entire Horn of Africa region. Now, could this escalation trigger wider regional fallout? And does the collapse of talks signal the end of hopes for a peaceful resolution? Now, for more on this, we have with us Stella Agara, governance and security analyst. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Stella. Now, what are the implications of Prime Minister Hamza Barre's visit to Las Anod on the fragile dialogue between Somalia and Somaliland?
The visit complicates an already very complicated situation in Somaliland, especially considering that there has been a semblance, of quiet and calm, maybe not peace, during this period of secession, even though Somaliland is not recognized as a territory. I think the visit will definitely interfere with the ongoing and planned talks between the federal government of Somalia and Somaliland, as the Somaliland itself and its administration recognizes this visit as probably destructive and interference with their territory, which they insist on having recognized. And of course, it will definitely interfere with the peace and reconciliation efforts that have been ongoing. I think as an entity that has had elections severally and elected democratic governments, even recently in 2024, they also feel that their territorial integrity is being interfered with. And of course, this poses a special issue around the area. I'm glad you've mentioned in your news item that there are actors outside of Somaliland who also have a stake in this conversation. And of course, it really complicates the relationship between Somaliland and Somalia. If, for example, entities like the US Army, of course, there have been complications coming in from the existence of the UAE and the partnerships that they have with Somaliland. And of course, the issues with Ethiopia having agreements with the area. So it just complicates an already complicated situation, Alyson.
Right. And how does the presence of the Khaatumo state forces in the Sool region complicate the broader territorial and political dispute between Somaliland and Somalia? So a number of things then happen. For a while, Somaliland has been claiming to be an independent state, and of course, the presence of SSC-Khaatumo definitely weakens their stance as an independent state. What this means for Somaliland is definitely a provocation, but what this means for the Federal Republic of Somalia is that they are winning towards maybe reconciliation and a return to some form of normalcy as a single nation. There are other factors, for example, like issues of administration. Some of the agreements that Somaliland has been trying to make were supposed to be beneficial to the people of Somaliland. What does this mean when other forces then find themselves in Somaliland? How will they relate to the locals and the local forces within Somaliland? I think there are questions that need to be answered. It definitely means that they'll be less open to involve themselves in talks, especially because we don't know what amount of coercion could happen in the process. And I guess we are also talking about a more heightened
push towards the secessionist agenda, especially because, like I mentioned in my first response, this has definitely come out as a provocation and as a reason for Somaliland to feel that maybe they need to push a little bit harder to be even more independent from the Federal Republic of Somalia. Yeah.
Right. And given the recurring breakdown of talks, what role can regional and international actors play in mediating a sustainable solution between Somalia and Somaliland?
Alyson, strange enough, my first recommendation would be that generally the international community and all of Somalia's, the larger or former Somalia territory, respect international law and relate with those two jurisdictions in the ways that the law require. I think having foreign governments beginning to have agreements with an unrecognized territory is problematic. It's problematic because constantly it looks like they're only engaging with Somaliland, but it defines very specific geopolitical threats and sometimes opportunities that may be an issue to the proponents and the opponents in this conflict. So I think first is to cease with making any agreements with Somaliland, and then secondly, help facilitate fast-tracked talks that will determine whether those two territories will exist separately. I think Somaliland has presented valuable reasons why they should exist as a separate territory, especially by virtue of the fact that on many indices they have proven that they can be peaceful and have peaceful elections and have some form of democracy in their countries, despite the fact that the economy is struggling. But they have demonstrated that with a little bit of support, they should be able to exist as a separate territory. Is this something that they are able to negotiate effectively with the Somalia and accept that they're going to separate? I think this is something that needs to be fast-tracked. There is no value that comes out of having a territory within any part of the world that is not recognized internationally and therefore does not get to participate in the markets, does not get to participate in any of the opportunities available outside of their territory. And of course, the citizens of that place have a right to enjoy what is available for the rest of the world. So I think that is the other. The third one is to end hostilities. And I think a lot of the forces coming from outside are benefiting in one way or the other. And so sometimes they support the hostilities between those two nations. If this could really be curtailed, it would help with the situation and create room for negotiation to be finalized and to allow for a clear understanding to exist on whether these two nations exist as separate entities, and if they exist as one entity, then to put an end to the war. I don't think it is difficult, especially in the present age, to have two leaders sit down, three leaders sit down. I'm struggling with the Puntland situation. Sit down and agree on whether they are going to have autonomy or whether they need to come together and run the nation either as a federal republic or whatever other mechanisms exist. I mean, there are examples route all over the world on nations that either exist as federal republics like the United States of America, or nations that have devolution of power and every independent devolved unit then has powers of its own. Whatever it is, I think a decision can be reached, and instead of the rest of the world trying to get into individual agreements with an unrecognized territory, they should fast track the process of making it a legitimate territory and then engage with them from a point of benefit on a win-win basis.
Right. Stella, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Thank you for having me.
Shifting focus to Morocco, the United States has approved a potential $825 million arms deal for the North African country. It involves the sale of up to 600 Stinger anti-air missiles and related equipment. With this, Morocco plans to modernize its military and to improve its air defense. The Stinger missiles are portable and are easy to operate. They can target attack helicopters or fighter jets and even military drones flying at low altitude, and can reach a range of approximately 8 kilometers. They are currently in use by various NATO and allied defense forces, so receiving them could be a game changer for Morocco. Now, the United States State Department has already given the green light for the deal. Now it awaits final approval from Congress. If cleared, major American defense companies, RTX Corporation and Lockheed Martin, will serve as the contractors. Washington describes Morocco as a key partner in North Africa. It has praised its role in maintaining political stability and driving economic progress. Morocco, in turn, is expected to easily absorb the new military systems into its forces. This deal is the latest in a long list of defense agreements between the two countries. The US has been Morocco's biggest arms supplier for decades. As of early this year, Morocco's active deals with the US are worth more than $8.5 billion. Now, this includes cutting-edge fighter jets to rocket systems, from powerful helicopters to advanced missile systems. Just last month, the country received its first delivery of AH-64 Apache helicopters from the US. Bilateral ties have significantly improved since Rabat signed the Donald Trump-brokered Abraham Accords in 2020. In exchange, Washington recognized Morocco's claim over the disputed Western Sahara. In the Trump administration's new term, the US has reaffirmed the strategic importance of these ties. Now, recently, a US general called Morocco a reference in defense and stability, meaning other African armies look to the country as an example. Now, Morocco has also been steadily increasing its defense spending amid regional tensions. This year, it allocated nearly $13 billion for its military. The figure is up from $12 billion in 2024 and $11.4 billion in 2023. Now, beyond regional security, Morocco also contributes to global peacekeeping efforts. It sends troops to support United Nations missions worldwide. As new equipment keeps rolling in, Morocco is emerging to position itself as a major player in Africa, and backing it is the world's strongest military player. As the United States builds strategic ties with some African nations, it's also considering degrading relations with several others. Since Donald Trump's return to the White House, Africa has once again been hit by a series of hardline policies, from travel bans and visa restrictions to aid cuts and trade tariffs. The continent is facing headwinds, and now Washington is planning to reduce its diplomatic footprint in Africa drastically. New reports reveal that the Trump administration is considering closing nearly 30 U.S. embassies and consulates worldwide. Many of them are located in Africa. Now, the move is part of a sweeping shake-up at the State Department, driven by the Elon Musk-backed Department of Government Efficiency, with a focus on shrinking federal operations. The U.S. is looking to shut down 10 embassies and 17 consulates across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. In Africa, embassy closures are being considered in Eritrea, Gambia, Lesotho, Republic of Congo, and South Sudan. In South Africa, the U.S. could shut its consulate, while diplomatic missions in Somalia may face downsizing despite their critical role in counter-terrorism. Now, the plan is still under review and would need sign-off from Secretary of State Marco Rubio or the White House. Embassy and consulate closures are also being considered in France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. But for Africa, the impact could be far more profound. Less diplomatic presence means greater isolation on the global stage. Embassies are crucial for diplomatic engagement, development coordination, and public outreach. Shutting them down risks cutting off direct communication with governments and local communities. It could erode people-to-people ties. Now, Trump's policies have already altered U.S.-Africa relations. Many nations are facing aid withdrawals, tougher immigration rules, and deportation orders. In South Africa, diplomatic relations have soured after Trump accused the country of mistreating white farmers and committing human rights violations, a claim widely rejected by experts and officials alike. But as the U.S. pulls back, other global powers are rushing in to fill the void. China, Russia, Turkey, and the Gulf states are deepening trade, infrastructure and defense ties across the continent. So while the US steps back, Africa's geopolitical balance could shift in real time. And our last story is from Zimbabwe, which has begun compensating white farmers whose land was forcibly seized 2 decades ago. But many of these farmers are rejecting the offer, calling it insufficient and unfair. Last week, Zimbabwe announced the first payments to white farmers to compensate for the controversial land reforms of 2000. The government approved $3.1 million, just 1% of the total $311 million claimed. Under the agreement, farmers would get this initial amount in cash, with the remaining balance to be paid via treasury bonds over a 10-year period. While some farmers have accepted the terms, a group representing nearly half of the 4,000 commercial white farmers has rejected them. They call it a token amount, far short of the $3.5 billion agreed in a 2020 deal by the government and the farmers. The group wants to reopen negotiations, saying those accepting the payments are doing so out of desperation. In 2000, Zimbabwe's then President Robert Mugabe launched a radical land reform program. White-owned farms were seized and redistributed to black Zimbabweans to correct historical injustices. At the time of independence in 1980, the vast majority of fertile land was owned by just a few thousand black farmers. But the reforms were often violent and aggressive. Land was forcibly seized without compensation. Many white farmers were assaulted, harassed, or even killed. In the aftermath, Zimbabwe's relations with the West also deteriorated sharply. Now, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who came to power after the 2017 coup, has been trying to rebuild Zimbabwe's foreign ties. Earlier this year, his government began compensating foreign investors whose farms were protected under bilateral investment treaties. The latest compensation move also comes amid simmering tensions next door in South Africa. President Donald Trump has accused the country of targeting white farm owners, citing it as a reason to cut aid and expel diplomats. But as Zimbabwe rolls out compensation, critics say the efforts fall far short. Will Harare follow through on its promises? And can it escape international scrutiny this time? And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching and goodbye.